Welcome to Linda's Corner. My name is Linda Bjork, and today we're going to be talking about the power and potential of choices. I'm grateful to welcome special guest, Mike Acker. Mike is an executive and communication coach, a keynote speaker, and the author of 4 books, including bestseller Speak with No Fear, which was designated as the #1 book on overcoming fear of speaking on Forbes.com. You can reach Mike at Advanced Coaching and Consulting, and I'll include a link in the description. Welcome, Mike. I'm so glad you could join with me today.
Linda, thank you. Thank you for having me on your show. And I'm really looking forward to just bringing some great content and value to your listeners today.
Oh, thank you, because that is really what I'm all about. I desire to have good content, something that is worth listening to. Like you feel like you're a little bit better for having invested the time. So perfect. I'm so glad we're on the same page. And I'm excited to talk about your book about fear. And fear of speaking is one of the biggest problems that people have. In fact, I've heard it said that if you're at a funeral and you're seeing someone speaking up at the pulpit, people would rather be the guy in the coffin than the guy giving the speech up there because it's so terrifying. So being able to overcome that is a pretty big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. I just got off the phone with someone like that. This is what I do all day long. I just coach people on this. So this is right up my wheelhouse, and I'm looking forward to helping people in that. But not just if they're not afraid, there's other ways that all of this is applicable to them.
Yes, overcoming fear in anything is a really big deal. So I have so many questions for you, but if it's okay, I would really, really like to hear your story. You left this tantalizing teaser about drug smuggling and Bible smuggling and inner city Mexican schools, and I thought, oh my, I think I would like to hear that story.
Yeah, so that's not part of the fear-inducing aspect. But my dad was a hippie drug dealer. And so he actually just wrote a book called Pirates, Scoundrels, and Saints. And in it, I read it, and I'm looking at all these characters, and I just thought, all of these characters are my dad. And this is his life. This is what he did. And he and my mom smuggled drugs from Colombia and Mexico and really all over the place. And they brought it up to Florida, and they sold it pre-cartel days. So that was their life, and they had all these adventurous, interesting stories. And my mom, in addition, was a witch. And so in this whole milieu, they decided to have kids. And when they decided to have kids, they decided that they're going to switch out of drug dealing and out of drug smuggling and switch over to a more,
legal?
More accepted legal drug, coffee.
Oh, okay.
So they started a coffee company in about 1978, right around the time when Starbucks was gaining some traction in Seattle. They were also in Seattle, did it quite well, sold it a few years later for a lot of money. And into this whole world after my dad sold that coffee company, looking at what was next, thinking about going to do his bar exam, he and my mom were in Hawaii, and both of them around the same time had these radical transformations where my dad audibly heard God speak to him out loud and say, "Tim, I'm your friend, and I'm for you, not against you." And so he audibly heard, and he actually said, "I am 100% in. God, anything you want, I will do. Anything you want, I will do." And at the same time, my mom, she was meditating, and when she meditated on the blood of Jesus, she felt a power course through her that was unlike anything else she'd ever experienced. And she said, "Whoever that is, that's who I want to follow." So they became Christians, and we were in Hawaii when it happened for both of them. My mom, I think, had it right before the trip to Hawaii. I was about 4 years old. And so my dad, in his drug smuggling glory, brought over some marijuana and a happy birthday Jesus cake because it was Christmas time. And with the hot hippie commune, they smoked pot and celebrated Jesus' birthday because he had just decided to follow Jesus, even though he had no idea
what that meant. Isn't that wonderful?
Oh, it's when I heard the story as an adult, I was like, oh, that makes so much more sense about my parents. I get how these stories fit in that I heard about crashing a plane in Colombia. Why would you do that if you're an attorney? Because that's what I knew him as. So we're in Hawaii, and I can't remember exactly. We just sold the coffee company, and so we're just there. And my parents hear about Youth with a Mission, YWAM, and they went to this YWAM base and signed up with the founder of this movement and dove in And that's where they got baptized in the ocean in Hawaii. And then we went on a 3-month mission trip to Hong Kong, China, Taiwan, Japan, Philippines, Korea. And we traveled around, saw a whole bunch. Came back, they put me in a Christian school. Came back, and my dad finished the bar and became a lawyer at a Christian law firm. And they got very involved in the Christian community, but not political Christians, not just churchgoer Christians, but the type who said, let's heal the world. Like, our lives have changed so much by the choice that we made, and our lives have been changed so much by the choice he made, that let's make some new choices. So we were doing soup kitchens and visiting nursing homes and flying down to Mexico every year and doing other things, not to smuggle drugs, not just to make a buck, but really to try to help people. We even did some AIDS care in the 1980s when you didn't even know if you could get AIDS by sitting on a toilet. And there we were going to people's homes. And so I got to see my parents do this. That's really the parents I remember. And into that whole life, my sister and I are growing up. I grew up and developed a speech impediment early on. So I could not say the J sound.
Oh, really?
I could not differentiate shoulder and soldier. And I had a very hard time. So my fear of speaking journey, my difficulty in speaking started as a kid. And yet my parents worked methodically with me, and I apparently embraced it wholeheartedly and practiced every day at home very thoroughly and overcame that. So that brings me up to about 10 years old. I'm doing well. Our family's doing well. And then we'd already smuggled Bibles into China, put the Bibles underneath the kids' clothes because, hey, they won't look for the kids' clothes. And so we smuggled to China. We're doing all this stuff, mission trips, going to Haiti, and life is fantastic. And then Linda, my dad comes home from his law job one day, and I'm about 10 years old, and he says at dinner, quit my job. We're moving to Mexico.
Wait, what? Why?
Yeah, he said, I quit my job, we're moving to Mexico. My mom and dad got up from the table and went and had an argument in the other room. Came back, and my mom's not so happy. My dad's like, hey, this is how it's happening. After summer, we're going to move down to Mexico, and we're going to live there for 9 months. So we went down there to be missionaries, and it was supposed to be 9 months. And I really struggled with the language. I just overcome my speech impediment, and now I was struggling with the language. I could not learn it. My sister was learning it. My dad already spoke it because you got to speak Spanish if you're smuggling drugs.
There you go.
And my mom was having a hard time. So I learned that this other kid had just done a full immersion, and he said it went great. So I told my dad, just put me into a school. I know we only have like 3 months left of the school year. Just put me in school. I already did all the schoolwork and homeschool. Just put me in school, and I'll learn it that way. So my dad, having grown up in this very adventurous life, he goes, yeah, let's do it. Well, he knew from our mission work, he knew a 5th grade teacher, the grade I was in. He knew the 5th grade teacher who was in an inner city Mexican school. Now, my friend went to like a nice, private, prestigious, people spoke English.
And you had not that.
That's not what I had. We drive into this inner city, like, run-down Mexican school in 1990, maybe 1991. And he pulls up, and at the time, I was as blonde can be. I'm like blonder than your blondest hair. My hair was just white blonde. I was tall, buck tooth, like they stuck out there like horses. I had blue eyes, like I still do, and I was tall and all arms and legs.
And you didn't look like everybody else, huh?
No, I don't look like anybody else. No,
you might have stuck out just a little bit.
Yeah, when you're 11 years old, you just want to fit in.
Yeah. I don't know if we grow out of that.
And my mom loved my blonde hair, so it hung down to my chin. And nobody had hair like mine. So we go into the school, and my dad is just like the chameleon. So he's like, all right, Mike, you stay out here. I'm going to go talk to the principal, because he can talk his way into anything. It's 3 months to the end of school. He's going to talk them into letting me stay at school. He goes, but if you don't like it, you don't have to stay. So I knew as soon as he left that I didn't like it. And I'm standing there, and pretty soon the entire school heard that there was this phenomenon that was glowing white. And the whole school gathered around me, like teachers and everybody. And people would run up to me and touch me and run away, or run up and touch my hair. So I backed up until I was standing against a wall. Oh. And I had the entire school surrounding me. And I'm just standing there, just me. No teacher coming to my side. They're all with all the other kids. And they're laughing and they're yelling and they're saying stuff, right? I don't know what they're saying. They would send out people and they would touch me and say, "What's your name?" And then they'd run away. So my dad comes out and goes, "All right, Mike, pick up at 2:30.
So what happened to the "if I don't like it, I don't have to stay" plan? Apparently that was plan A and we've moved on to plan B.
Yeah. So a couple girls grabbed my hand and pulled me off to a classroom. And, which, I'm 11 years old. So I don't like girls. That's just like cooties, right? This is not an exciting time. You're awkward. And then I got put in the class, and every single day people just laughed at me because everything I did was funny. I was a phenomenon. I'd show up at school some days with my uniform, and there would be no school. There'd be a party. And all the kids would be dressed up and get up for the party. And I had no idea because I didn't know when they said, "Hey, we have something." So my fear of getting in front of people, because I had to do that on a regular basis, was so intense. I would actually have the psychosomatic fever that would set in.
Oh,
and I got sick more that year than ever before, purely because of fear and terror. I would get dropped off at school, go through the day, and then I would have to navigate myself through the downtown this is before a lot of tourists were there too. So the whole city would be gaping at me as I walked through, and then took a bus. And in 1990, the buses in Mexico had slatted wood, so you could see the ground pass by underneath you.
Ooh.
They'd be playing some music, and then I'd get my bus and take it 30, 40 minutes home, and then I'd get the fever and settle in. So that was one of many of those early times. I will say that when we look at the choices that make us, the choice I made during this time was to look back. And I said, I want to go back. And so in 8th grade, I convinced my parents to let me live with the family in the United States, because we ended up staying past 9th grade, past 9 months. And when I was there, I realized that looking back ended up not being as glorious as I thought. I think we do that all the time.
Right.
We look back and we go, if I could just go back and recapture that relationship, that moment, that job, that time in my life, that age. And so I went back and recaptured it and found out that it wasn't as glorious as I thought. And when I came back to Mexico, I threw myself in. I worked hard on the language, and I embraced the culture. And even though it was hard at times to still do some of the things I did, and I still got bullied and all these different things, I actually leaned in instead of leaning out, and I made a choice to belong. And then by the time I left Mexico, I was actually more Mexican culturally than I was American.
Really?
And so that's the good parts of my story.
So how long did you end up staying? So it was more than 9 months.
7 years.
7 years. So 9 months turned into 7 years, huh?
Mm-hmm. And my parents stayed there for 13, 14 years.
Oh, really? And then after that, you decided to come back or go to college or whatever?
College. And so I went back for college, and my sister came back, and she ended up getting married. So she was actually only there for 5 years. She's older than me. And then I was there for 7 years, and we were back to the United States. And then my mom kind of moved back, and then my dad was commuting back and forth, and then he joined us. And now we're all in the United States. My dad's shocked that none of us are married to a Mexican or
people do it all the time. Yeah. So you've had some amazing experiences, and you talk about how life is not just what happens, it's how we respond. And you had a couple different responses, and your first response is what anybody would want to do, just that, and then you chose a different response, and you got a lot out of that experience.
Yeah, if I look back and think about some of the different responses, there's some good ones and some bad ones. And I think one of the big ones was for me is the choice to belong. And so I've actually taught on this before, that there's often in our mind this victim mentality or this outsider mentality. We go into some place, a new job, and I just don't belong. I'm not like them. I'm not from this. I don't have that corporate background. I haven't been in sales. I haven't been in real estate. I haven't been in teaching. I'm new to this realm. I'm older. I'm younger. And so we're often looking for ways that sets us apart instead of looking at things that pull us together. And we even do this when we're speaking. One of the huge reasons why people are afraid of speaking, one of the huge reasons, it's one of the things I cover in my book, Speak With No Fear, is that when we're speaking, we're often thinking about, what did they think about me? Well, that's an outsider perspective.
Right.
I'm not like them. I'm not there for them. They're looking at me. All eyes are on me. I got a whole school looking at me. And yeah, that brings terror when it's all about me. But one of the things I talk about in the book is it's not about you. And one of the things in life is it's not about you. In leadership, it's not about you. The more we can be thinking about how can I help the people I'm talking to, how can I help the people I'm serving, how can I help the community I just joined, the less we're going to have this reaction, fear, difference, opposition, negative response. You go into a new club or a church or a school, and if you're thinking of all the things that they're not doing right instead of how can I help, the difference is going to be huge. If you're going into a speech and you're thinking, what do they think about me? Versus how can I give them the information, the content, the resources, the education, the training they need? Well, the outcome's going to be very different. And in a leadership role, we need to be thinking again and again, I don't have people who work for me. I work for people. And so I'm here for them.
That is amazing. And I can tell that you practice what you preach, because when we first started, one of the first things you said is, I'm here to create value for the listeners. And so I can tell that you do that. And I love that this creates such a win-win situation, because by creating value, you really are giving a benefit to the people that you're serving or leading, or both, because I love servant leadership. That's my favorite type of leadership. And then if it also can help you to be calm so that you can speak better and lead better and function better, that is a perfect scenario.
Absolutely. And people will end up liking you more. They'll end up respecting you more. They'll end up following you more. Yeah, maybe not some people. Some people want the impressive, charismatic, powerful, forceful, whatever personality. But most people are attracted to the type of person who's going to do something for them. And hey, I'm for you. I'm with you. I always tell people when I'm doing my coaching for communicators, tell them, look, you will impress people with your strengths. You'll impact people with your weakness. And so what are you going for? And some people want to impress. So I could come up here and say, Linda, look at what I've done. I've achieved this, and I've achieved this, and I've achieved this. And isn't that cool? Look at what I've achieved. And by the end of the time, you and your listeners might go, wow, that's impressive. But they're not walking away with anything that made a difference in their life. Versus you come and say, man, I stood up in front of people and I cried in bed at night. And I remember being so embarrassed and so frustrated when I would talk and couldn't say the "j" sound. And it was just miserable. And I remember that. And I remember coming back to the United States and not knowing how to belong and speaking from an American audience. And all of a sudden here I'm in college and having to speak and all the lights crowd around me. And I was anxious and I sped through the entire talk. And so those talks right there, they don't impress you. You're not like, wow, good for you. But they impact you because your audience and you think, oh, yeah, I get that. And now we've got a bridge. And then I could talk about how I've walked through it, and then I can help people walk through it as well.
And that creating of a bridge and creating unity. I love these topics. I love where this is going.
And this became such a huge topic in my own life that I started diving in more and more into the study of emotional intelligence. Because when you're speaking and communicating and leading, you need to be emotionally intelligent. You need to be intelligent about, is the audience with you? Are they for you? Have you connected? So even in 2 weeks from now, my book Connect Through Emotional Intelligence launches. It's my whole study on this. It's my study of, and really I put it into a framework of understand me, understand you, understand us. Because a lot of times we try to understand others, or we try to understand ourselves, or we try to understand how we can work together. But really, understanding of myself, my own weaknesses, my own strengths, what I have to give, what I don't have to give, understanding you and who you are, Now I can understand you as the audience and you as the people I'm working with, and now I can understand how we work together.
That's beautiful. And that creates a three-part triangle, which is the strongest base, the strongest shape. That's very clever.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun researching it, and just as I read through the books on emotional intelligence and I'm doing my own study and reflection, I'm coming up going, hey, this is something that a lot of people see. It's you and them, but actually it's you, them, us. And that's that connection piece. So you connect, you create the us through the emotional intelligence of me and you. So in communication, I'm working with people how to connect all the time. This is how you connect to your audience. This is how you connect to your company. In my executive coaching, I'm working with CEOs and such, saying this is how you connect. This is how you do it. When I was a pastor for years, I would work hard on connecting with people. And over again, through that connection, then we can communicate, then lives can truly be impacted.
That creates a synergy, something where the whole is greater than the parts. So
yeah, absolutely.
That's beautiful. Okay. That's amazing. Let's see. When you talk about you be you, you talk about two weights you carry. What is that about?
Yeah, so in the book Speak with No Fear, I give 7 strategies, and one of them is it's not about you. And the other one that I talk about, that I love to talk about, it's one of my favorites, is you be you. And the whole idea is this, that when you're speaking, you're carrying a weight. And everybody knows one of the weights. Every single person knows that there's a weight of content. So right now, you just asked me a question, and so I have content, I have a message, I have material to deliver. Now, I know this really well, so it's not very heavy for me. But if you asked me, Mike, explain nuclear fission, I don't know anything about nuclear fission, and so that weight would be so far away from me. And if you think about anytime you're talking, if you're a teacher and you're a brand new teacher and you're standing up in front of your class, well, the content is relatively new to you. Now, if you've been in the same grade for 30 years and you've taught the same things for 30 years, then that content's really close. So the weight is not as heavy. It's like a front lateral raise. In a front lateral raise, if you go to the gym and you take 10 pounds and hold it out in front of you, 10 pounds can be really heavy. In fact, if you're a buff person and you're carrying 10 pounds, you're only going to do that for a while before your arm starts to shake. However, if you're the most petite elder grandma, 10 pounds close to the chest is not too much. It's the weight of a heavy handbag, and you can carry that for a long time. So the closer to the chest the content is, the closer to your heart it is, the closer to really knowing it is, the less it weighs. So I can say this right here because I've said it many times, because I wrote about it, because I coach on this topic. It takes me really no effort to talk about this subject right here. I know it really hard by heart. The first time I did it, it was a little bit more shaky. It was out here. The more we know the content, the more we're holding it closer to us. It's still a weight because I still got to work to get it across. And it still should weigh on me, and it should be a burden to me that I'm trying to get out and burden for this message. Now, a lot of people understand that. They go, yeah, the weight of content, I get that. Totally. If I don't know it, it makes me less confident. If I know it, it makes me more confident. But there's a second weight. And the second weight is the weight of personhood. It's who you are. And the less you know yourself, the more you're like that 10-pound weight far away from the body. And the more you know yourself and are comfortable with yourself and really accept yourself and yes, improve yourself, and yes, appreciate yourself, but you really know yourself and accept yourself, the less this is going to weigh down on. And what a lot of people do is that when they get up in front of people, they try to become someone else. Yes. And instead of being themselves, they try to be like that person. And what they need to do is know who they are and then be comfortable with who they are. Get better at their skills, absolutely. Don't make it an excuse for not doing anything. But really accept who you are and then communicate out of who you are, not who you maybe wish you could be.
Wow. Okay, that's deep. I'm going to be thinking about that all day. Okay, so the weight of who we are and being able to understand and accept ourselves, that's so huge. You know, as I talk to different people with all different kinds of expertise in life and in their careers, everything comes back to working on ourselves and accepting ourselves and loving ourselves. There doesn't seem to be any career, any expert, anything that can escape that. We become better at what we do when we become better at knowing who we are.
Very true. And that's, when you look at emotional intelligence, the whole basis of emotional intelligence is self-awareness. Self-awareness, and then self-regulation, and then self-motivation. And so it all starts with self before you do anything else, before you understand, empathize, explore, whatever it is that someone else is doing. And before you build a connection, it starts with self. And even sometimes when I talk about this, people say, well, it's not about you. So it's not about you, but it starts with you. How do those two things coincide?
Kind of a bit of a paradox. And yet,
if you don't know yourself, then you're not going to be comfortable with yourself enough to serve others. And if you don't know what you have to give, and maybe I think I'm the best at something, and if I'm not self-aware about it, then I can't actually serve. Or if I don't know that I'm coming across this way, if I'm not self-aware and I can't regulate that, then I can't serve. So I got to be aware of who I am, and I'm the only one responsible for me. No one else is responsible for my emotions. No one else is responsible for my motivation, for my actions. I am responsible. So I have to be responsible and aware and take control of myself so that I can go out there and help serve and make it about others.
Right. And I think when we're more comfortable with ourselves, then we're not thinking it's about me. I need to look cool. I need to sound cool. I need to sound whatever, because that's not even part of the equation. I'm comfortable with me, and now I can focus on someone else and focus on the message, because I'm not worried about what is he going to think about me, how am I going to come across, because I'm okay with that.
Yeah, absolutely. That encapsulates it so well. And the more that we get to the spot where we accept ourselves on stage, the less that we'll try to be a poor imitation of someone else, and we can become the best version of ourselves.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I have seen someone speak who is very, very good, and I saw one of their, I guess you would say students, as this is a mentor, trying to copy the style, copy the stories, copy the whatever, and it looked so fake. It looked like a copy, it looked like an imitation. Even though what they were copying was a good thing, it didn't come across very genuine. And then when this man, he was a guy, he kind of broke off and started his own company, I heard him speak a second time, and he was a totally different person. He was himself. And then he was super successful. And, a whole bunch of other things followed. But it was really interesting to watch those two different speeches that were night and day.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we do in even less pronounced ways. Like, for example, I was working with a military officer, and she said that she had just got promoted to a high rank. It was fantastic. And she said, I want to be commanding. And I said, well, who do you want to sound like? And I was actually setting her up for a little bit of a trap. I said, who do you want to sound like?
Mm.
She said, oh, well, there's this one guy, and when I was a young cadet, this is and walking through. And I said, well, tell me about him. I said, well, he was probably about 60 years old, and he comes in, he's just got this booming voice, and he just comes in, and as soon as you walk in, he's just big and in charge. And I just thought, someday I'm going to be like that. And I said, oh, that sounds awesome. This guy sounds fantastic. Tell me about yourself. How would you describe yourself? And she says, well, I'm very gregarious. I smile a lot, and I'm not that tall, and different color of skin, different gender. And I said, now, help me figure this out, because this guy seems very different than who you are. So how are you going to become like him? And she goes, well, that's why I want to hire you. I said, I can't do anything to help you become like him, but I can help you be the best version of yourself. And it was like this pause. And she had been trying to live out this other personality, and it was very shaky. But once she realized that she didn't have to sound like him to sound good, and once she didn't, it was just like that person you said, moved out from that shadow, and she was able to embrace her role and embrace her ability to communicate. She did it fantastically. In fact, I'd say it was probably more fun and more relevant to today than the other person.
Wow. Boy, that's beautiful. And that gives hope we're not cookie cutter people. We all have our different experiences, and we have our different personalities, and we have our different strengths and our different weaknesses. But from your approach of being the best version of yourself, then each person has something that they can contribute. And we don't have to be cookie cutter. We can give what we have to give and help create a beautiful, cohesive whole.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And that cookie cutter mentality of just trying to be like someone else, I mean, it doesn't do anybody justice. Because if I want to listen to Steve Jobs, I should just listen to Steve Jobs. But if I want to listen to a poor imitation of Steve Jobs, I mean, I don't. I want to just listen to the real thing.
Right.
And like, I don't like buying covers of albums, like those compilations that artists do. That's like, hey, in honor of the Beatles, we're going to do this. I'm like, nah, let me just listen to the Beatles. And likewise, don't try to take on the voice of someone else. What a lot of people do, and like probably the gentleman that you were talking about, is that they listen to the same person so often that they start sounding like them. So I tell people, when you listen to somebody, a podcast or a sermon or a CEO or speaker or comedian, make sure you don't just listen to one, because, and this is actually in the book, don't listen to just one because you'll become a clone. Don't listen to two because you get confused. You bounce back and forth and it's distracting. Listen to three so you can see the uniquenesses and in all of them and take on certain aspects that are like you. So when I listen to Jim Gaffigan, and I'm like, okay, there's some things that Jim Gaffigan does that I could do. I can grab a hold of that, but it fits me. And I listen to Chris Rock. I'm like, I know his personality and his difference. It's too different for me. I can't do that. I listen to Tom Hanks, and I'm like, okay, there's some things I can do that he does. I listen to T.D. Jakes, and I can be wowed by him, and I can be reminded that he has great vocal variety. So I can be encouraged to have vocal variety, but I can't do a lot of things he does. So as I listen to these different people and different speakers and different bosses and different people who have mentored me, I can take on aspects, but only aspects that fit with my own personality. It's like if you go into a shopping mall, I can look at the different mannequins at the different shopping mall stores, and some are going to fit me better. If I go into I don't know, like a female store, I don't wear female clothes, so none of them are going to fit. I can go those that look great, and I like the color selection. Maybe I need more color. And I could go into a hip PacSun or Zoomies and be like, I can see why that's cool, but it doesn't fit me. And I can go into Gap and go, okay, there's a little bit more here that fits me. And I can go into the different stores, but I really need to I can be inspired and learn from some, but I got to stay with what fits me, my stage of life, my background and such.
That is beautiful. And being authentic. And allowing yourself to do that and stretching and reaching out a little bit, but still making sure that it connects with your authentic self.
That's right.
That's amazing. Well, is there anything else you want to cover?
Hey, that's great. I think we've given some great things for people to think about and to grab a hold of. Ultimately, I tell these people this again and again, wherever you are, it's not where you have to stay. So if you're in a spot where you are afraid, you can move out of that. If you're in a spot where you're stuck or an outsider, you can move out of that. But the choices that you make right now either keep you where you're at, if that's where you want to be, or the choices that you make, just like my parents, will move you from where you are to where you want to be.
That is beautiful advice. Thank you so much, Mike, and thank you for visiting with me. I have loved this. I really feel like I feel enlightened, and I do feel like you have provided value, so I really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Great talking to you, Linda. Thank you so much for having me on your show and to share with your audience.
Oh, it's a pleasure. In closing, I'd like to share a quote from world-renowned heart surgeon and religious leader Russell M. Nelson. He said, "The joy we feel has little to do with the circumstances of our lives and everything to do with the focus of our lives." Today, I invite you to focus on those things that bring you joy. See you next time on Linda's Corner.